Hello everyone and welcome to Microsoft Access 2016 Basics. My name is Steve Bishop, and in this video we're going to be talking about how to use the exists operator in a SQL query. Let's say you're working on a database with two tables, a products table and a suppliers table. Now you'll notice that in the products table there is a supplier ID column that is the foreign key to our suppliers. And then inside of the suppliers table, we have a similar supplier ID field, but this time it's the primary key. And it's between these two fields, the supplier ID fields of both products and suppliers, that we establish the connection between our products and suppliers. Now let's say that you are tasked with finding all of the suppliers that had a product that was less than $20. You might start off with a where statement that looks something like this. First of all, let's join the products and suppliers tables according to that foreign key and primary key relationship. Then, on the products table, give me all of the products that are less than $20 in price. What that would do is limit us to just those first two suppliers, where Exotic Liquid and New Orleans Cajun Delights would be a match for supplier ID. That's because there is no supplier ID in products of 3 and 4. So those are the only two suppliers that we could potentially match against. But then we have further criteria that says, and the price has to be less than 20, which means the only supplier that has any product that is less than $20 is supplier ID 1. Now, how would we do a select statement to get the supplier name of our suppliers if we're needing to cross over both of these two tables in order to find them? Well, we can use an exists statement to kind of do this. First, you'll notice that we have wrapped up our select query inside of these parentheses. So we're saying select product name from products where supplier IDs match and the price is less than 20. This will get us one set of results that give us the product name. But then we can add a select star from suppliers and say wherever there is a record that exists from that original query, I want you to give me the supplier information. You can kind of think of the exist as a true or false. I want to see all of the suppliers where this condition is true, and the condition is really just a select statement that gets you all of the results that might be true. Let's take a look at a similar example in our Access database. So here is the query where we were using the in operator in order to use this select query here to get just those IDs from the people types. And then based upon the IDs that was returned from this select query, we then further filtered our people results according to where person type matched the IDs that were listed from this select query. Now, whenever we see a query inside of another query, this is what's called a subquery, where you have one query that's returning results and then another query that is using the results of that query. That is called a subquery. Now, I'm going to do similar functionality with our exists statement. I'm going to take this in query and I'm essentially going to rewrite it using exists. So let's go ahead and create a new query design. And we know that there are a couple of tables that we're going to want to use, but the first one I want to start with is I want to filter according to the people types. So I'm just going to add that one first, okay? And we're going to close that. And I'm just going to take this where statement that we have here, just like we had in this subquery here. I just want to use that same exact criteria. There we go. And copy. Go into our SQL view. And I'll just paste it in here and we'll get rid of our semicolon. Okay, so that will get us for our results. We're type name, not like V. Oh, I need to add, let's add an asterisk here because we need to actually show something. An asterisk will get us all of the fields. And we can see employee and customer because we don't want to see vendor, right? We're eliminating vendor from those results. So go back into the SQL view. Now, the other thing that we were able to do was filter according to the people active, the people.active, but that was coming from the people table. And the same thing for this person type field. That is a part of the people table. So we need to somehow bring in people table. And what we can do for that is in our where statement, we can say where people dot people or person type matches. And in this case, we just want the ID of people types. And just to make this real clear, I'm going to use people types.id so that we can see that that's clearly the ID field coming from people types. Now we need to add an and statement in here because we have multiple criteria that we want to filter on. And if I try to run this, you'll see that, what do you mean person type? We don't have people being brought in here anywhere. So what we need to do is actually wrap this up in parentheses because our people is going to be brought in as part of the initial query that goes outside of these parentheses. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to also bring in this other piece of criteria here where we're saying and people.active equals yes. All right, so getting all of the criteria, and we're essentially moving it inside of this one where statement. Okay, and just to help kind of make things more legible, I like to sometimes move everything down into all these different statements into their own lines. It makes it a little easier to read. And we can see the parenthesis before the select and the closing parenthesis after the yes. So all of our criteria is inside of this where statement. But we need to once again bring in the people table. So the way that we can do that is we can just simply wrap this up in another select statement where we're going to get all of the, we'll just do star again. We'll figure out what selects we need to do in just a moment. But this time we can say from people. And now we just want to add the where exists. Okay, and that's going to look at this query and all of the results where this criteria is met. It's going to get us all of the people where there is a true statement, right? We get some sort of result from this query. And now if we run this, we're going to see that we get all of the results, right? We get all the information, ID, first name, last name, date of birth, salary, active, etc. But those are, in fact, the 3 records we're looking for. Now all we need to do is basically filter according to this criteria here. So I'm just going to copy this. There's no sense in wasting our time trying to type it all out. And replace the asterisk with just those values. And then also the select star isn't totally necessary. I could just get a single field from people type. So I'm just going to use ID for that because I don't need asterisk. I don't need everything from that people types table. And when I run it again, once again, we get exactly the same results that we see if we run query 6. Okay, both of the answers, the solutions, or I should say results from both of these queries are identical. So you might be wondering, why should you use the exists statement instead of the in statement? I mean, after all, these are basically doing exactly the same thing, right? They're giving us the same exact results. And in fact, you might even say there even looks to be a little bit more language here, more characters in this query 7 than there is in query 6. And the answer is speed. When you're writing a where exists query, an exists query goes much faster when you're dealing with large record sets, lots and lots of data. So if you've got thousands of records that you're trying to work through, the exists operator will work much faster than the in operator. So whenever you can, you want to use the exists operator instead of the in operator. Typically, I reserve the in operator for when I only have a select few numbers like 2 and 1, and I can just put those inside of parentheses. That's perfectly fine to do, but if you're going to be using it to add some sort of subquery inside here, typically you're going to regret that. Let me close out of this. I don't want to save those changes because I want to leave it how it is. But there you go. So if you want to write an exists query, you just have to realize you have to have some sort of subquery in here that selects those records, and you can combine in the where statement, you can combine value matching between all the different tables that are going to be interacting with inside of this select statement. And then you just add the exist statement where you would add the field and in, right? We had the field name and in. We're replacing that with exists instead. And then we basically just do exactly the same thing we were earlier. So just a quick recap. Create a query that selects from the table you will not be showing the results from. You need to have inside of your where statement, you need the relationship between the foreign key and primary key of the two participating tables. And then you can add whatever type of filtering criteria you want inside this where statement on either of those two tables. You need to wrap this query inside of parentheses, and finally add the where exists to a select statement that's actually going to give you the fields that you want to display from this select query. I'd like to thank these individuals for your continued support in being a member of this channel. Without your assistance, this channel would not be possible. Thank you.